Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast, brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners like you to maximize your business value and achieve the exit of your dreams, whatever that means to you. With insights gained from over 100 business transactions, we share real-world strategies, lessons, and expert advice to help you build long-term, sustainable value in your business. Each episode is hosted by one of our Mastery certified partners. They're seasoned experts who've helped countless business owners navigate the complexities of growth, scaling, and building value. They bring first-hand experience, actionable insights, and a passion for helping you build a business that thrives. So let's dive in.
Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast. I'm Kim Bentson, a business owner, operator, and honestly still figuring out a lot of this right alongside you. Today's topic hit me right between the eyes because it's one I've personally wondered before. What do your financials actually say about your readiness, and are they telling the story you think they are? So this question came in through our website from a business owner. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like I could have submitted this myself. I'm asking real questions from real business owners, just like you and me, about running and eventually selling a business, and bringing those questions to some of our certified partners at Mastery Partners. If you have something you've been wondering about, you can submit your question at masterypartners.com, and it might be featured in an upcoming episode. So let's meet our certified partner today, who we're going to be quizzing, Dave Casey. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here. This is kind of weird for me to be on this side of the microphone, I guess.
That's right. That's right. In our meetings, I'm in meetings with Dave off and on, and I'm always blown away by the amount of information and knowledge Dave has. So I'm really excited about diving into today's question. So let's get to it. Dave, what do buyers see in financials that I don't? Because if I'm being real, I look at my financials and I think, I'm profitable, I'm good.
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay a ton of taxes. But I don't know if I'm looking at them the way a buyer would. So I guess I'm really asking this as much for me as for the person who submitted it. But when a buyer looks at financials for the first time, what are they actually looking for that most owners miss?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I went through this personally when I sold my company, and I was somewhat, I won't say arrogant, but I was pretty confident in our financials. We didn't do anything squirrely. We didn't have a private jet or anything like that, So I felt like our financials accurately reflected what our company was doing, and I was really taken aback. The attorney, the M&A attorney that was helping me sell the company, said, "We'll need financials, and here's what the format they need to be in," which was different than I used all the time. Here's the things they're going to be looking for, and I had no clue that those things were going to be important. So what really came out is that the financials that you need to run your business day to day differ, first of all, from what the IRS wants to see, and it also differs from what a buyer of your business wants to see too. And as you just said, when I looked at financials, I had a feel for how well the month went. And so when I looked at the financials, first thing I looked at was the income statement. Okay. Yeah, I thought that's about what we sold this month. And yeah, this is about what I thought our EBITDA would be this month. And then I kind of scanned expenses real quick and just said, well, I don't see anything that's way out of line here. So we're good, and that's about all I did on a month-to-month basis, right? But it's interesting when a buyer looks at your business, he's looking very much deeper. He's definitely looking at trends and trend analysis. Definitely looking at your balance sheet very closely. What's on the balance sheet? What's not on the balance sheet? What does the balance sheet tell me? What's missing? What seems to be something that I get a feel that there was more money here somewhere. Where did it go? Or, there must be some stuff off balance sheet because I'm not seeing what I expect. So these are all the things that really pop up that business owners, I think, you really don't think about it day to day. You really only think about it when somebody's giving you this deep dive exam.
Yeah. So if I'm a bit, I do the same thing that you just described. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the P&L and thinking, oh, we're doing good. So how did you learn what to look for, and how do you know what you're even missing if you're not a buyer, if you never bought a company before?
Yeah,
and would know.
if you're not, have never been in this position before, right?
Yeah.
So there are some things that would seem obvious. Now, one was we had a business that had inventory. So inventory is an area that buyers look into pretty closely because typically, and we weren't a manufacturer, we were a distributor, and we had an IT services company, so we managed people's IT stuff, but we also sold them IT equipment to do that. So we had a certain amount of equipment that was in inventory. We had service spares, because we had service contracts. We're taking care of equipment for people, and we had work in progress. So we would have a big project. We'd bring in a bunch of equipment. We'd program it. We'd stage it, and then we'd ship it out to the customer sites and install it. So there's quite a bit of stuff laying around in the business. A buyer looks at that and says, I wonder how much of this inventory is on the books versus not on the books. How much of this inventory is work in progress, like I just described it. It's coming in, it's being worked on, it's going back out. How much of this stuff is on the books, but it's actually been drop shipped from the manufacturer to a customer site, but the customer hasn't paid for it yet. So the company still owns it. So how do we account for that, right? So then there's the old obsolete inventory. We're in a technology world. Stuff changes fast. A PC that you buy today, 18 months from now, still runs perfectly, but is worth a tenth, of what it was, because it's just, time marches on, like technology moves quick. And so how does that accounted for? Where does that show up? How have you written down inventory? And then how have you added, when you buy something, you put it in inventory, add it to inventory. When you sell it and you take it out of inventory, you relieve it from inventory. And how's that done? Is it consistent? Is it, last in, first out, or first in, first out? There's all these different methods and depreciation methods and all these kind of things that I really didn't give a care about running the company, but a buyer was all over that. Show me. So
Yeah. Well, I rely heavily on my CPA, but I think her main goal is to keep my taxes in line where I don't have a heart attack. And so when she's looking at the P&L or doing, or you mentioned earlier a type of financials that the buyer was looking for.
Yeah.
So how do I know what to even ask a CPA, and does it depend on the type of CPA I have? I know those are two questions together, but I'm depending on this professional to take care of it.
Yep.
But that may not always seem the case, because I'm assuming you had a CPA for your
Yeah, wonderful CPA. In fact,
yeah,
they're a sponsor of the upcoming Business Transition Summit, so it was really good.
Wow.
Just to stick that in there. Great CPA, and uniquely a CPA that worked with corporations, large and small, on month-to-month basis. Obviously, most business owners are just like you said. Just help me not pay any more taxes than I need to. Hopefully, pay little to none. Show me how to do that. Kind of managing to taxes, not managing to the business itself.
I think my goal was keep me out of IRS jail. That's what
there is that.
Pretty much told.
Yeah. If you're paying zero taxes and you're profitable, there might be an issue.
Right.
So, but the other thing is that Jeff had gone through several transactions with clients as well. So he had done several times where people had sold businesses, bought businesses, merged. and gone through bankruptcy with people. I mean, there's all these different things that happen. So a CPA that is knowledgeable in all those areas is very important, I think. Um, and certainly, the things that, again, I was trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to reduce my taxes. I want to be profitable. I just as soon at the end of the year it shows very little profit, so I pay very little taxes, right? But that's a school of thought, and certainly if you're an owner-led business, that's what most people think that way. That what took me a while to figure out was buyers look for two big things. So they look for growth, a business that's growing substantially year to year, and they look for profit. They look for a profitable business. And you really have to prove to them, yes, we are growing, and yes, we are profitable. And because they look back, I would say at least 3 years. Sometimes they look back a little further, just depending on the type of business and type of transaction it is. So those are the things I think that really, we were growing fairly good. We weren't, spectacular, like 100% year over year growth, but we were growing at like 20% a year. And to some extent, I was trying to control that. If we grow super fast, then a lot of stuff gets dropped and customer satisfaction goes down and you can't keep people trained and you can't keep people, period. I mean, it's hard. So, and then the profit thing was I wanted to make sure that, we're profitable, but again, way too much profit. There's no such thing as way too much profit, but if I showed too much profit at the end of the year, I felt like I was unnecessarily paying a lot of taxes. What the CPA and the attorney shared with me is, well, put yourself in the buyer's shoes. Okay. Yes. Okay. You're growing, it's a growing concern. That's always good. And profit, profit's important. In fact, profit's the thing is that most transactions take place on a multiple of earnings or EBITDA. And so if you don't have EBITDA, or if you have low EBITDA, artificially low EBITDA, let's say you're doing all kinds of unnatural things just to not pay any taxes, so you're showing very, very little profit at the end of the year, a buyer's going to say, cool, I mean, you made 5% profit. So, and that, what is that? Let's say that's $1 million. Well, good. In your world, it's a 5 times multiple. So your business is worth $5 million, 5 times that million. And you go, wait a minute, I really had a lot more profit than that. But we did a lot of stuff, so we just didn't pay taxes, and they said, well, hey, what you're showing is $1 million of profit, so they're going to start at that point. And then you've got to do add backs. There's a lot of things you need to do to show that maybe you did make more money than that, but that takes a lot of work. So, and that's kind of, frankly, that's where mastery comes in. We help people start to manage that way and start to think that way, even if that transaction may be 3 to 5 years away. We need to start thinking about profit, thinking about growth, the two big things that buyers look for.
Well, and the financial statement and the financials is the starting point, and where an owner sees success, I think sometimes just in listening, a buyer would see risk. Yeah. And that's a starting point to go down that rabbit trail. So if you had, if your margins dropped over, you're thinking you're being efficient and I'm, becoming more profitable, but they want to know why that margin is dropping. Or if your, customer concentration is at 40%, most of your business goes to this one customer, that's a flag that your financials are giving away, that you don't even, you're just looking at, yay, we kept this client and they're growing and we're expanding our services to them. And that's not always a good thing to a buyer.
Yeah. And that's the same on both sides. Actually, it's the same on the supplier side. So in our case, I can describe a transaction that didn't happen. So probably 6-7 years before we actually sold the company, we started down the road with another buyer to buy our company. And we had one of our vendors, suppliers, had a fantastic product and they were fast growing. They were growing very fast, and consequently, we were growing very fast. And we became their number one business partner in the Southwest region. And we loved their product. The customers loved it. Our team loved it. I mean, it was a great symbiotic relationship. We really enjoyed everything about it, and we were very profitable with it. It was one of the more profitable products that we sold at the time because it had a lot of maintenance attached to it and a lot of our costs, or our product, our services were attached to that product. And so it got to be around 35% at least of our overall sales every year. And they were so successful that they were purchased by Nortel, one of the big guys in the industry at the time. And we go, oh, that's not good. Because we were also a Nortel partner, and Nortel had their own way of doing business. It was usually not a profitable or very profitable relationship with us. And we said, oh, this is gonna throw a wrench in the works. And we just thought about that long term. I mean, long term, yeah, now they're going to be a Nortel company and probably our margins will change and things will happen. But immediately what happened was they tried to move all of their distribution and everything to Nashville from California. So literally they could not ship any product for 90 days, not a single thing. We had orders backed up like you wouldn't believe. And it really hurt us. That 90-day period on our financials looked terrible. Meanwhile, there's a company out there looking at buying us, right? And they're keeping track of us, what's going on. They also already owned a company like us that had the same exact problem. So they knew what the problem was. They knew that the problem was Nortel, and it was relatively a short-term problem. But we were going to lose some sales. We were definitely losing cash flow because we had a whole quarter without shipping anything and not installing anything or paying, charging for training and maintenance and everything else. So they immediately came back and started renegotiating on the purchase price, and we said, well, what the situation is. Doesn't matter. We're looking at the hard numbers in front of us. We're looking at your accounting that you told us is correct, which it was, And so we never did that deal. So that was actually a blessing in disguise. That's a whole nother story. That roll up did not work well, and lots of people lost a lot of money. So we were glad we weren't one of them. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's really the buyer looking at a financial statement. If it's not accurate or it's bloated in a way with personal expenses, or the profitability isn't the real profitability, it's a tax savings, then they don't really know what they're buying, and that just reduces the value or kills the deal altogether, just like it did for you.
Definitely adds time because there is a process that we go through all the time. Certainly our brothers over at North Star go through this, where you take a company, you look at their financials, and then you look at, okay, what can we add back? We may have a CEO that's paying themselves double the market rate for a CEO of a $20 million company. Well, we realize what he's doing. He's taking some money off the table. That's fine. We have to add that back in to their bottom line so that, when we are negotiating with the buyer, we can say that's an expense you're not going to have. Obviously when you buy this company, or if there's other discretionary things that owners do, discretionary expenses, and so all those are added back. But it takes time to do that. It takes time and if you can get all that done before you ever talk to a buyer, it's much easier. It's make sure that those things are done ahead of time. Everything is explainable. Everything is in black and white, so there's no surprises. Buyers don't like surprises, for sure. And it's interesting. I've done on previous podcasts, I've interviewed some of the guys at North Star. And so I interviewed Tom Bronson, what's the number one thing that you think, will kill value when you go to try to sell your company? And his quick answer is owner dependency. If the company's way too dependent on the owner. In fact, we just have done a couple of podcasts regarding that. And I interviewed Jeremy Furtick, who takes a little bit different approach. And his number one thing was bad financials. Financials aren't good. going to kill your value when you go to sell your company. So you've got to have really tight, clean, good, honest financials, and so that's a starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, the financials really tell a story, and it, I guess, depends on your point of view at what story you're reading there. And I know that you see this show up all the time in the transition readiness assessment.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's very rare that when we do a transition readiness assessment, we look at 9 different areas of the company, but it's very rare that financials are not the first or second lowest ranked area, because we really do get into situations where, and again, it's nothing dishonest or anything like that. It's just the way people run their business. To effectively run it, you don't really need to do all those things that are generally accepted accounting principles.
Yeah.
But to sell your business, you better have that data and have it correct.
Right. I see that. I hear this all the time from y'all. Like the business owners are running a good business, but it's not necessarily a valuable one or a transferable one.
Right.
It can still be that.
Yeah.
A good business, but
or even if it is, they will take a haircut when they do that. They will lose value just because there's uncertainty or risk, as you mentioned, in the buyer's eyes.
Yeah. So that's a little daunting, honestly. Mastery Partners is all about taking action. So, and through your examples, I can see how easy it is to think things are solid, and where I'm thinking it's solid, and a buyer is seeing risk.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm a business owner listening right now, which I am, and I've never really thought about my financials from a buyer's perspective, where do I even start? So what are 2 to 3 things that I should go look at immediately or shift to try to get that under control?
The number one thing I think is, what's the quality and the relationship with your professional advice, okay, with your CPA. And it's interesting. Almost every business owner, when we start working with them and going through the transition readiness assessment, one of the early questions in the financial side is, tell me about your relationship with your CPA. And it may be like, well, we've dealt with Bob for 15 years, and he's always done right by us. But I'm kind of getting a feeling that maybe we've starting to outgrow Bob. It's kind of one of these deals. When they were a $1-2 million company, Bob was the perfect fit. They're now approaching 20 million in revenue, and maybe Bob just isn't quite on the ball. Still wants to do things the old way, and of course, the very first question we ask: are you doing cash or accrual accounting? And many businesses, even if they are doing accrual accounting in QuickBooks, are running their business like it's a cash business. And you can do that up to a certain size. But what their CPA tells them is telling sometimes. If the CPA says, yeah, no problem, you can run this as a cash business, why complicate things? Well, it's going to get complicated when you go to sell it. So that would be the number one thing is, what is the relationship with the CPA? Are they the right person, day to day? Are they the right firm for you to deal with? Do you have any reservations at all? And it's amazing. They will open up many times and say, I've got a CPA. They've done all right by us, but I just get this uneasy feeling like we need to maybe look around a little bit in that area. The second thing I think that will be, have they ever had a problem in their financials? If they ever had a month or a quarter where everything just looked wrong, and how did that come about? What happened? What brought that on? And how did the CPA address that? How did they address it? And then the very small companies, We've got a few of those that we work with. They just don't. They're not savvy at all when it comes to financials. They are just trusting. It's like the old adage of Americans going overseas and you didn't understand the currency. You just kind of hold your hand out, take what I owe you. They don't know.
Right.
And they're intimidated by it. And they don't want to admit they don't know, or they don't even want to discuss it. It's just like, as long as we don't run out of money, I feel like we're okay. So there's
Yeah.
there's variations of the theme, but those are the things I see early on. Yeah.
Yeah, I luckily did a TRA for my business. I think my business was 18 months old at the time.
Wow.
And one of the things that I learned from taking that TRA and from my CPA together is keep those personal expenses separate. It
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
can junk up your financials and get very confusing quickly. So
Yeah.
that was one thing I was like, okay, so I'm pretty vigilant about doing those things. Otherwise, I never would have known to even,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
um, oh, we'll just pay gas. The company will pay for this gas. But anyway,
Yeah.
so you also mentioned, that consistency of earnings killed that deal. So that I see that as an action item. If your earnings are not consistent, then you need to deep dive a little bit to see what the
Yeah.
problem is.
Yeah. There's two things there, and one is the big official term is quality of earnings. Is where do your earnings
Yeah.
come from? But when you dig into it, if there's any way in your business to transform it from a transactional business to a monthly recurring revenue business, we've got to find a way to do that. And to the point where it makes a huge difference in valuation. And I understood that when I had my business. I had started to do it, but I didn't have 100% monthly recurring revenue when I sold my business. I had about 60% monthly recurring, and the rest of it was big project business that was kind of lumpy, in the way that business came in. But that's a huge thing, and that also makes it a little bit easier to do your accounting. One of my early clients with Mastery was interesting because they were a software company that served the equine world. So they served veterinarians, horse breeders, veterinary hospitals, all that kind of stuff. 100% of their revenue was monthly recurring revenue. They were a software as a service company. They hosted all the software at AWS. They just billed their client by the month and by the module. They had like 7 or 8 modules, I think, in their system. But there was no accounts receivable. I mean, beginning of every month, ding, all the money was in the bank, for that month, and every month, very consistently. And you could actually see, the growth happening as they signed more people, and people bought more modules and things like that. So it's very, very predictable. So an outside buyer looking at something like that can really say this is a fairly low risk deal. All of these people are automatically billed every month. If they don't pay, we just flip the switch and their software doesn't work, so they will pay. So it's
Yeah.
it's the ideal situation, really. Now that's harder to do if you're a manufacturer building big $1 million machines that get shipped and built and installed, and takes a month to get them online or whatever. So there's variations, obviously, but that's kind of the ideal situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like in your experience and just the business owners you've helped, by the time they're thinking about selling, it's often too late to fix the story. Their financials are
Yeah.
telling. So,
Yeah.
um,
Particularly if they come to us, and we had one of these that ended up not becoming a client. I mean, he came to me and was referred to me, and we talked, and he had a nice little home services business, actually, he served homes and like strip centers, small commercial kind of stuff. And but he was a part-time owner of the business. I mean, had a full-time job, and this was a side gig. He had done it full-time for a few years and then gone back to his original career. And so he's anxious to sell the company. He says, I feel like I want to monetize this and, put some money away for retirement. But he hadn't invested in the business like he should have. And his accounting was all over the place. And so it really became a challenge. I mean, it was, and he was ready to sell like immediately. I said, within 24 months, maybe as little as 30 months, we can get this thing humming along. You'll get probably more than what you anticipate you could receive for this business, but it's going to take some time and effort to do that. And he was like, no, I don't, I have enough full-time job now. I can't take that time. So I've really felt bad, that we couldn't help, or we couldn't, it would be difficult to do. It's almost like I wanted to find somebody to help him run the business, something like that.
Well, and I know that this has happened too. I've heard you mention this too about um, shifting from cash to accrual, and not just how how your financials are, but just how you're also using your financials like a decision making tool
Yeah.
versus a tax thing.
Yes.
So,
Oh, definitely that. Yeah.
and that takes time to be able to fix that. I know the cash changing from cash to accrual, that's a lot to clean up.
It is, and it's again a business. Sometimes business owner says, "I just don't understand why. Why do I need to do that?" I mean, I know that the insurance bill's coming in November, so I'm saving money for that, and they're looking at it from a cash in, cash out basis. They're really not looking at what accrual accounting does and why. And so but it's again, it's almost like, but your buyer is always going to be on accrual accounting, and they're going to want to see your numbers that way. And if you don't run your business that way, you're going to have to spend a lot of time or pay a CPA a lot of time to kind of recast all your numbers into accrual mode so that they have something they can look at, and so we also just point out it makes it easier to run your company when you are on accrual accounting. It takes a little bit, as you mentioned, to get there, but once you're there, it does make your company run better, and you make better business decisions. So
It's really interesting because these just aren't accounting issues. It's really the decisions being made every day that impact your ultimate value of the business, or whether you're going to sell that or pass it on, or
yep.
whatever that looks like for you. But it's those little decisions that are made every day that can really improve that value, I guess.
Yeah, the other thing is, if you think about it, and this is what I try to talk to people about, even if they're nowhere near any kind of transition, they could be. We just started the company 2 years ago. We got a long runway. That's great, and I'm sure you're going to be very successful. The things to look at are, what can we do so that if we had to sell the company for whatever reason, it could be a health reason, it could be a divorce or something like that. There's always things that happen that you never anticipate, or you don't want to anticipate. Let's put it that way. And so, how prepared are you, and what would happen, and what would be the best outcome you could hope for? So I think running your company, great. It's a great quote. I think David Hammer is who I attribute it to, or that he's a great mergers and acquisitions attorney. But it's like, treat your business like you're going to be there forever, but run it like you're going to leave tomorrow, and that way you're ready if something does happen. and you're making decisions that are for the best of the company and yourself ultimately if you're the owner. So that those are important. And then I really think that um, it's just good stewardship to really just do things the right way. Look at the long term, and it will pay off in spades. It really will. When either when the time comes to sell the company or even just day to day running the company. Because once you have really, really solid, accurate financials, then you can start to do analysis against those financials. You can start to look at trends. You can look at rates of change. You can use the financials as a tool to actually help you improve your business. And if you're just kind of winging it, you don't have that tool. I mean, it's just one thing just another thing you could have done to run better.
Yeah. Wow, that makes so much sense. So before we wrap up, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I probably need to look at my business a little differently. Like, would someone else even understand this business or even want it? You know, I really need to change that perspective. Just like most business owners, I get bogged down in the day to day, get the money in, limit the money going out.
Yeah.
So, what's the one thing that you would tell me to do first in regards to? You mentioned a lot of great things today to do to take
Yeah.
action on financials, but what's the one thing you would tell me to do first, Dave?
Oh, I would. What I would do is just make sure and seek out your outside professional that helps you with financials, and just say, I want to understand more about how financials affect my company, what I can do, maybe changes, even slight course changes that I can make that are going to make my financials better and ultimately make my company better. And even though I have no plans to transition out of this company anytime soon, what can you show me that will help me if someone were to come along and be interested in my company, that I would get, you know, definitely get the maximum for it. So that again, that's a convoluted answer, but it's really like make sure you have the right outside professionals and that they know kind of what your long-term vision is, and that what can we do to what can I do day to day now that's going to improve that. And so I think in financials are a tough one because again, if you didn't, I didn't grow up in that world. I mean, I have a business degree, but I took 2 semesters of accounting and was glad to get out of there. So, I mean, it was not, it didn't give me energy. Let's put it that way. So, but running your own business, hits you pretty, as you know, it hits you pretty hard, and you have to understand the basics, and then you start to look at, but once you get to that point where you can use the financials as a tool to help grow your business, then that's eye-opening. It really is. Even stuff like taking on debt, which I'm kind of a debt adverse person as
Yeah.
my household, but in the business world, that's a wonderful thing, or can be a wonderful thing. It can
Right.
be a great tool for increasing and growing your business. So it's some education like that is kind of like along those lines.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. We don't always know what we're missing or where to even look. Like, I don't even know that that's hurting me. I just, So is that where something like the transition readiness comes in? The
It
assessment?
does, because when we do that scoring, we actually know for every question we ask almost 400 questions, and for every question that we ask, we kind of know what the best practice answer is for that question. So what we're doing is when we're scoring it, we're just saying where is this business owner against the best practice, and how far off are they? Are they spot on? I mean, they're doing exactly what they should be doing, or are they like 6 points away? I mean, they're not doing anything that needs to be done in that particular area. So that to me is one of the most helpful things we do, in that they can look at that and chew on it, and just say, wow, I didn't realize how bad my marketing was, or, I didn't attach any value to that. And again, in financials, it is an area where a lot of us are like, just let me just do the minimum. I mean, it makes me so scared to do financials. I don't want to look, or I know we did great, so I want to see them right away. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't use it, you don't think of it as a tool, or you think of it as a way to increase your value, but it is much more than a scorecard. Let's put it that way. So, and
Yeah, I
certainly the
think
TRA
it's
helps that.
Yeah, I think it's helpful, and I really think that's the shift. It's not about working harder; it's about seeing your business more clearly.
Hmm.
And so, if you're listening and thinking out there, I don't actually know what my financials are saying to a buyer, it might be worth taking a look at where you really stand. And you can learn more about the Transition Readiness Assessment at masterypartners.com. Reach out to Dave here; he would love to talk to you about how to make your business better. Because the sooner you see that, the more options you have, the more time you have to make those
Yeah.
changes. Um, so, Dave, anything else you'd like to add before we close out here?
No, I was going to say, if you need help on your financials, we're ready to help you, Kim.
Yes, I know. I do need that. Well, I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about. I know it did for me. I wrote down a couple of things that you said, Dave, that I'm like, oh, I really need to take care of that. So, Dave, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your experience. We always learn so much from you. And to the business owner who submitted that question, thank you. I think that one helped more people than you probably realize.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and thinking, yeah, I've had the same question, you're not alone. So thank you for listening and being a part of this. If you are asking these questions, you're already ahead of most of the people out there. So good for you. If you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, keep maximizing business value, and see you then.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Maximize Business Value podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas on how you can continue driving value in your business. But remember, it's not just about listening. It's about taking massive action. Visit our website, masterypartners.com, for more resources. Grab a copy of any of the books in the Maximize Business Value series on Amazon or via the links below. And don't hesitate to reach out if you want to know how to apply these concepts to your business. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to relentlessly execute while you maximize business value.